So, then Samuel Tarly sees the army approaching, and his wiener is about this big. He knows that Stannis Baratheon's wiener is probably shriveled from the cold. Samuel has to rally his men. So what does he do? He takes out his wiener, and he dangles it around for all his men to see.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Registered Nerd Podcast. It's been an unforgivable amount of time away from here, but the holidays, among other things, forced us to take a little hiatus. But rest assured, we're back and ready to return to making more content. I'm Snackpacks, and returning with me today is GuiltySpark and a newcomer, Foxy Clean. He just goes by Fox. For this episode, we're going to kick off a multi-part series discussing Game of Thrones. Figured with the new season coming out, we really should discuss some of the seasons in the past, things that we liked, things we didn't like, and how it compares to the Ice and Fire novels.
And there is a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, a hell of a lot to talk about. This episode, we're going to talk about season 1 and how it connects to the novels. And oh man, my voice just cracked.
Well, I mean, you are going through puberty. It's a little late. It's a 30s puberty, but
yes,
it's okay.
His fangirl response to Game of Thrones.
Yes, my favorite.
You just get so hot and bothered, so excited about it.
You have no idea how erect I am right now.
Just the thought of George R. R. Martin's fantasy world.
He's obsessed with dicks too, you know.
I mean, aren't we all? I mean, just look at society. It's all
it's all dicks.
It's all dicks. Everything.
Yeah. So, anyways, this episode is going to focus on season 1, which the first season pretty much lines up pretty well with the first book from finish to end.
Yeah, I would say season 1, probably of all the seasons, is they had so much content. They were kind of still pacing themselves properly. They were almost giving it like a novel's pacing where, okay, they obviously didn't cover everything. There's a lot in the books that they had to gloss over. There's a lot fewer characters. But man, looking at the way they've done, some of the later books, it makes me nostalgic for how well they stayed, with the pace of the books and what happened there. Because right now, like, the show is completely off the rails.
Yeah, I think it's gone a weird direction, a direction that I would say is taken a very poor writing quality.
Well, I think it's just the fact that they don't really have George R. R. Martin's work to kind of copy they're not copying his work anymore. They're having to write their own stories, and we've kind of found out that they're just really not that like talented of writers. Also, I mean, you got to give it to George R. R. Martin. He wrote these books over many years and had a lot of time to go back and change things and really think about these characters. And part of the problem with the show right now is they're like, well, every year we have to have a new season of the show. Right. So it's like
consumption of like right now.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that everybody loved about Game of Thrones is it didn't like always have those storytelling tropes, like where the hero always lives and the good guys always win. It was more realistic where, you could be killed. You can be the good person, you can be the hero, and you can still die and have horrible things happen to you. And it seems like lately in the show's starting to conform to more television show tropes where characters are teleporting all over the place, and people are making decisions that don't fit with their characters just for the sake of plot that they never really would have done.
But I mean, that stuff has been kind of coming down the pipe from like season 3 onward.
Yeah, I would say season 4 was still pretty strong, but you were starting to see like hints of it. But yeah, in the last couple seasons, it's just been unforgivable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess let's focus on the first season. I really enjoyed the first season. Like I said, it's pretty true to the book. I don't think there aren't huge differences. There are some character differences that are very strange, that kind of cause a ripple effect down the line in terms of like story writing. Because like,
any story that's this massive and this sprawling, like I think maybe the showrunners didn't realize early on that when they make small changes like that, it is going to have an exponentially large effect toward the end of the story.
Yeah.
Well, who are you thinking about in particular?
I'm thinking about the omission. Okay, I'm okay with them omitting characters. I want to be clear on that. I don't mind when they take a character out and they're like, we just don't have the space for it. We'll find another way to make this happen. But when you add a new character that offers nothing to the story, that bugs the shit out of me.
Right.
I'm talking about the Ross, the whore.
I knew. Yeah, you've never been a fan of Ross.
I fucking hated her character so much.
Ross is the female empowerment character, but I think the reason why it's a little bit insulting is because there are real well-written female empowerment characters in the show that feel like natural characters. Ross is just, they felt like, oh, well, we have to have a sexy prostitute that it turns out, she can read and she can even see things that Varys couldn't see. And it's like, oh, okay, how did she get these abilities? Like, I don't know. I think she's a weak character too. I agree with you.
I mean, you have something like you get rid of, you add Ross and then you get rid of like a minor character like Jane Poole, who becomes kind of like not a central character, but like important to the story later on down the line in the novels. So
right.
Like you're already creating a ripple effect by omitting her. And I just don't think like stuff like that, it's kind of insulting.
Yeah. Now Fox won't know who Jane Poole is because he hasn't read the books. Okay, so we're kind of three different levels on this. Snackpacks knows the books inside and out and knows the show. I know the show pretty well. I've read the books a couple times each, but I don't nearly know them as detailed as he does. And Fox has only seen the television show, right? Fox has read a couple of the books,
Just
but
a bit of the books, yeah.
Yeah, but they end up, when they get rid of characters, they end up kind of having to merge other characters together to kind of cover those plot points because somebody has to do it because it has to move the story forward. And Jane is one where they ended up strangely giving a lot of Jane stuff over to Sansa, and they kind of bled their characters together. Later on, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the later seasons, but Sansa's story is one of the ones that is completely off the rails in the show. It's completely different. Now, maybe they'll end up in the same place. Maybe the book and the show will come together. I kind of doubt it. At least, it won't. I don't think it will resemble in the books anything like her arc has been in the show. But we'll have to see. But yeah. that's definitely a good point, Snacks, about what happens when you do make minor changes and you do omit characters. And obviously they can't have all the characters.
There's way too many, and there's way too many side stories, and there's a lot of world building in the novels that you just can't cram all that into 10 episodes in a season.
Right. And it is a shame because in the books, that huge number of characters is one of the things that makes it so real, because real life is, it's not. I will say one thing about Star Wars. Okay, we made it, 20 minutes before talking about Star Wars, but I will say
folks.
I will say one of the things about Star Wars is it's always like the Skywalkers and the Solos, and it seems like, you have this galaxy of trillions of people, and you have this galaxy of trillions of people, and it seems like a couple people are really the only ones driving the story and all of history forward. And in Game of Thrones, it's kind of the opposite, where you see really people that you would call kind of minor characters, and they end up doing these things that have huge, far-reaching consequences. And sometimes it's just because they have a personal grudge, or sometimes it's because they're an idiot, or sometimes it's because they're more clever than their station would suggest that they be. But I think that's one of the really strong things about his storytelling. So episode 1, Winter is Coming. This was my introduction to the show. I did actually start, I start a lot of shows not on episode 1, but I did start this one from the very beginning, and it didn't really grab me. I liked it. I think I got through the first 2 episodes, and then I kind of took a break from the show, and I was like, well, let me give the books a shot, and I read all of the books, which I think at the time there were 4. Um, and then I came back around and started watching the show, and I think there were 1 or 2 seasons complete when I started watching it. I didn't start right from the beginning.
I was really interested in what happened like in the very beginning of the episode, and I was like, I don't want to see all this other shit. Just show those zombie things again.
Oh, yeah, it was creepy.
It was
which,
it was a really good intro. And then I kind of was like, I watched
What
the
a
first couple
tease too,
episodes.
right?
Right. Oh, they're coming.
well,
They're gonna be huge.
I was almost kind of the opposite, where I liked, and maybe not just from episode 1, but in general, I kind of preferred the politics and the thing with the White Walkers. It was a little intriguing, but I was not quite as interested in that. I really liked the way things were playing out between, the Baratheons and the Starks and the Lannisters.
I mean, that's essentially how I started it out. I eventually,
right,
after watching the first couple episodes, I was like, I'm having trouble following all the characters, so I started reading the book.
right.
And now, and then after that, I was like, okay, I know who everybody is, and then some.
Yeah, I will say, so the show starts off with, there's a group of the Night's Watch is on a scouting patrol following a group of wildlings, and they come across a group of dead people, a group of dead wildlings. It's the group they've been tracking, but they're all killed, and they're arranged in kind of this runic. Their bodies are arranged in this runic symbol, and I think that the others have never been, like, the White Walkers have never been as imposing as they were early in the show, when it was kind of a mystery. And it was like, they all of a sudden the bodies were arranged, and then the bodies were all gone. And it was like, okay, what happened to all the dead people? And then you saw, I don't know, I think the thing that ends up killing them, is that supposed to be an actual White Walker, or is that, because they changed the look of the White Walkers throughout the show.
Yeah, no, it was that was an actual, like, White Walker.
Right. Which is it's very different than how they ended up looking. I really don't like the current, like, design of the White Walkers very much. I mean, the zombies are all fine, but the White Walkers, where they all seem very thin, and like they're kind of made of ice, and I don't know, they just seem a little frail looking. I did like the massive one where he's holding up the knight's head after he cuts it off, and he throws it at the guy. Like, what a terrifying thing. It's almost like, I want you to get away to go tell people what you saw, and let them know that we're coming.
Yeah. I thought that doesn't the book describe them as like kind of like beautiful in a way?
You know what? I don't remember. That's going to be all you. I don't remember exactly what their description was in the book, but
for some reason I was thinking, like, it's been a while since I read the prologue, but I feel like they're supposed to look more noble than that.
Right.
Instead of like grumpy old men,
Sure. Yeah. I don't think any of the renditions of them have been perfect. But I do definitely think when, it was definitely the most mysterious and the most intimidating in the first couple episodes, where we just saw these little peaks of them, and it's like they're doing strange magic with bodies. And it's later, now that they're just, marching through and throwing spears at dragons and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, like they're basically just a big enemy army right now. It's not quite as, I mean, obviously it's a huge army of zombies, but we've kind of seen a lot of that.
Yeah, the magic isn't as like mystic, I guess, anymore.
Right, now that we understand more of it, I guess.
Right, but yeah,
that
was the draw in the beginning. Was the books and the show both did that really well.
Yeah. And then the next thing that kind of happens is we're introduced to the Starks, who the show does a great job of tricking you into thinking that they're going to be the main characters. They just seem like this loving family, and they seem really honorable, and you're like, oh, okay, these are, in normal television tropes, these are the good guys, and maybe they'll have some setbacks, but they're gonna win out. And holy shit, is that not what happens to them in this show? So many bad things happen to the Starks. It's really crazy. But
I mean, And I know how I kind of understand why they they upped everybody's age to make things a little bit more palatable for some of the horrible shit that happens to them.
Yeah, well, some of the horrible shit and obviously some of the sexual shit. They didn't want to have, like, you can't really have a 14-year-old, a sex scene with 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds like happened in the book.
That's very true.
I mean, there have already been a lot of eyebrows raised and people,
What am I paying HBO for then?
Right? I know. Come on, give the people what they want. No, but we do have a nice little introduction to them, and we learn about Jon Snow, about how he's the bastard brother, and that's kind of a great introduction from the books and in the show where they find the dead wolf. And I mean, there's the symbolism there. There's a lot of symbolism in Game of Thrones, and there's a lot of foreshadowing. Probably the most obvious symbolism in the entire books and the show, I would say, would be it would be the when they find the wolf puppies.
Oh yeah, and the stag has like killed the mother dire wolf.
Yeah, the stag has killed the wolf, which is obviously, it's foreshadowing what's going to happen to Ned Stark and his whole house, really, at the hands of ostensibly the Baratheons. And they all get a wolf, and Jon gets his little white wolf, who becomes the largest of all of them, Ghost. I think that's just a great scene, and that's a scene that there is, again, there's some mystery, and there's obviously, there's a big theory about Game of Thrones about the actual players, and it's kind of there's a lot of Lovecraft in Game of Thrones too. And I'm not a huge Lovecraft person. I've read some of his books, but there's this kind of big theory that the game is really, it's not the politics and stuff. It's all these supernatural forces that are, the Lord of Light and the others, and basically like these gods that are just playing this game, and the humans, even humans as important as Jon and Dany and all of them are just the pawns. Like, no matter how important the humans are, it's like they're really just the pawns. Like, Dany having dragons was designed to fight against the White Walkers and the other god powers.
Can I just say that I really appreciate it when people call Daenerys or Dany by her actual name. It really, like, and it shouldn't bother me. But it really bothers me when like people who like watch the show like, oh, it's Khaleesi. Like, no,
right?
No, that is the title. That is her title.
Right.
My God, when you walk up and you talk about your manager, you don't go, hey, manager is like a really cool guy.
Right. You're absolutely true.
Like,
but real quick, just back to the gods point. I was actually rereading some of the books so we could start to talk about this. And one thing that I'd kind of forgotten about is there's that red priest that's on the ship with Greyjoy.
Is Morocco, right?
Yeah, Morocco. And I mean, he even tells him, like, your drowned god is nothing, is like a demon, is a thrall. Like, basically saying, like, yeah, the drowned god exists, but he's not really a god. He's just a thrall of like the darkness. Basically the opposite, the one they don't speak his name, the opposite of the Lord of Light. Yes. And I thought that was interesting because there's really this huge mythology that he's created that he kind of has in his head, and he gives us these little hints of it. And I mean, the world is so big too. There's Yi, which is at the far end of the world, which is basically like China, where the emperor of Yi is supposed to have a palace bigger than all of King's Landing, and he has dragons in his court and all that. And they have their own defense against the north. And then there's Southros, and where the water will kill you. Did you read, not to get off topic, but I was really excited to read it. Did you read Fire and Blood, Snackpacks?
No, I did not.
I just finished it. I read it over the holidays, and the story of the story, there's some spoilers here, but the story of the Targaryens and how they took over Westeros is really fascinating. But the part that I found most disturbing was there's one of the Targaryens, she steals Balerion the Dread. And they think she wanted to go she was kind of in exile on Dragonstone, and they think she wanted to go to King's Landing to just kind of show up in town with the dragon and show how awesome she was, but she couldn't control him, and he flew across the narrow sea, and he disappeared. Nobody knew where he was, and she appears a year later at King's Landing. Balerion has a 9-foot gash down his side and a bunch of other new wounds, and she's like burning up. She has this horrible fever, and her skin is all burned. And the maesters take her, and they can't cool her down. And they said that she just basically cooked from the inside out. Like her eyes burst, they got so hot. And they put her in a tub of ice. And when they did, all of these worms came crawling out of her, and it said they had faces and arms. And in the ice, they all died. And what's crazy about that is the maesters say that like the maester said that the thing that haunted him most about that was not what he saw, but the things that she was saying while she was dying. And it's the theory is that the dragon Balerion took her home, took her to Valeria, and it was just she got infected by some Valerian experiment, or they were all mages and practiced all these dark arts. And it was like, I read that chapter and it was just shivers how crazy it was. So there's this huge world, and sometimes I feel like what we're seeing in Westeros is maybe not even the most interesting part of it. There's a lot of crazy things that go on, and I think that's what makes it, again, we talked about how many characters there were, and it's also like how many countries there are and just how expansive this place is. It's not a small world. It's a huge world that we're just seeing part of,
Yeesh. I guess we should probably go back to what we were talking about with the first season.
Yeah.
I think everybody was pretty well cast. I think they did an excellent job with casting everybody on the show.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially early on, I think they really took their time and cast people that really did fit the characters. I'm trying to think of anybody. I don't really like Catelyn, the actress that plays Catelyn.
Oh, she doesn't bother me. I mean, Catelyn's kind of a bitch anyway, but
Catelyn is kind of a bitch, and I know she's supposed to be older, but like
downplayed in the books for sure. Though I mean, in the show.
In the show, yeah.
In the show, she has like multiple arguments
compared to
with
how
Rob.
icy she is. Yeah, in the
Yeah.
books.
Multiple arguments with Rob about Jon Snow.
Yeah, I think in the book too, though, they talk about like how beautiful she is, even though she's a little bit older and has had all these kids and stuff. And I don't know, that actress just had resting bitch face, or
like resting sick face. She was like sick and sad all the time.
And maybe I guess she kind of was sad all the time because when Bran was pushed from the tower and broke his back. What
really is strange, and maybe they were just trying to show like how much she cared for Ned or whatever. In the books, I'm pretty sure she's the one that convinces Ned to go to King's Landing, whereas in the show, she doesn't want him to go.
Yeah, I think in the books, it's more of a like, you have to do this. It's, your duty.
Basically, she's saying, you're the only one he trusts. You're the only one who can protect him.
Yeah. And I don't know why they turned it around, maybe just to like create some conflict. But yeah, they definitely did turn that around in the show.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing in the first, I don't know how to feel about this, but like the wedding of Dany to Khal Drogo.
Yeah.
It was okay. They get the eggs from Illyrio at the wedding, and I don't know, but it's like I don't understand that whole part about Dany's character anyway. And maybe because I've read the books a couple times and watched the show, and they're a little different. But she does like fall in love with Khal Drogo, it seems like, and very much accepts him as her husband and seems very happy with him, especially in the book. And it's like it's kind of strange. Like you were sold to him. Your first wedding night was like kind of a rape.
But the thing is in the book it's significantly less rapey.
It is way they made it.
I mean, lot. I know she's younger. She's what, 13 or 14 at the time.
Yeah, she's.
So, I mean, it is rapey, but it's like,
yeah,
it's not like she's crying and he's just, taking her from behind, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, the show weirdly made it feel a lot more rapey, and that's why it feels strange later in the show when, she looks back at that time in like kind of like almost, oh yeah, I was married and I loved him, and it was like that's strange the way they portrayed it in the show. Like even when she meets John in the last season and she's talking about all the horrible things that have happened to her, and she's like, I've been raped, and it's like, oh yeah, you were raped that one time, but then you kind of like got into it later, I guess. I don't know. I always thought that was a little awkward in the first season.
What about you, Fox? What did you think of, I guess, the cast? Well, I guess, do you have a favorite?
All right, good contribution, Fox.
Good, yeah, thanks. Put me on the spot here,
Have an opinion, damn it.
I like Bran. No, so I like Bran first season, but now he's kind
of
gotten... Yeah. I mean, he was even one of my favorites in the books too, from what I remember reading. But now he's kind of grown into like, I don't know, it's weird.
People seem to either like Bran early on or like Bran now. I kind of prefer God Bran, like three-eyed Raven Bran.
I prefer no Bran.
I just think they've made him so like passive. Like, what the fuck is he doing?
I think the thing is, when we talk about almost that like Lovecraftian level of things, where like that's kind of the level that Bran is almost on right now.
I see, where he's just in the background moving.
Well, he's seen the bigger picture, so a lot of the little stuff is less important to him, because it's like, when you're seeing the clash of gods and you kind of realize like how small, this is just a theory, I don't know this for a fact, but when you see kind of how small all this petty shit is, he's really playing a different game right now than most of the other players are doing. That's my theory about it. There's a really great YouTube channel called Ideas of Ice and Fire, where he gets really into the nuances of the book and all these like, really deep theories and stuff. And there's some really messed up stuff with Bran and with the three-eyed crow, about, was the three-eyed raven really benevolent, or was there maybe some stuff going on with the children of the forest that like, there's the whole idea of Jojen paste, and did Bran get fed Jojen paste after Jojen died, in order to kind of unlock some of his power? Oh, you haven't heard that?
No. He's not a book reader, dude.
Oh yeah. You got to get into like, you look up like Jojen paste and all that stuff. And there's a lot. I think the thing to always remember with Game of Thrones is don't take anything like for granted. When just because the show or the books present somebody as like a good guy, you can't necessarily believe that, because it's often not true. Or at least they may have motives that we don't understand.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Snacks.
I think, in general, character-wise, first season, my favorite character first season was probably between
Littlefinger.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, main cast characters, or like the main story characters would probably be Arya and Tyrion, and for like the side characters, I would say Varys and Littlefinger.
Yeah,
season one.
I think for me it would definitely be Tyrion. I mean, everybody loves Tyrion. He gets all the best lines, and then Littlefinger is right up there too. Littlefinger, his whole monologue about climbing the ladder. Chaos is a ladder, and many refuse to climb. They hang on to honor, or the gods, or family, and many who climb, they fall.
I didn't care for what they did with him later on. I don't care don't like what they did with Varys later on either.
Oh, Varys. Well, that's because we're.
I mean, I know. Like, haha, I'm making a joke, but they neutered his character.
Ouch. Well, I think, yeah, obviously, like, they're past. They don't know what to do with either character because Martin hasn't written anything for them. So with Varys and Littlefinger both.
It's not even an excuse, because you have established characters. You have established like motivations for them. you just don't know what to do with them because you got to have your aha moment. You have to have your shocking moment. Like everyone was like, "Oh my god, Sansa and Arya are gonna get into an argument."
Yeah, no, that I never believed that. I always knew they were playing. Although that was a very TV trope thing that they did that I don't think Martin would have ever done.
No, I personally would have been more satisfied to have Tyrion have outsmarted Littlefinger or Varys, better yet.
Right. Well, okay, here's the thing about Varys. In the first couple seasons, Varys knows like everything. He has spies everywhere. He knows what's going on. And now in this last season, I remember when the last season started, and I'm like, they are going to have to pull some shit out of their ass to keep Cersei from just getting steamrolled right now, because you have Dorne, the Reach, the Riverlands, the North. You have pretty much everyone except for ostensibly the Stormlands, which we never hear anything about the Stormlands. Their army was kind of gutted multiple times anyway. And the Westlands and the Crownlands. And that's like all Cersei is in control of. And I was like, she is just going to get steamrolled unless they come out with some Deus Ex Machina to keep her in the fight. And I was like, how are they going to do that with Varys and his network of spies? Like everything is just lined up. And then sure enough, within a couple episodes, they're like, oh, Euron Greyjoy now has this giant fleet that came out of nowhere that, you know, he's able to ambush the other fleet. And then he's also, characters are crossing back and forth on Westeros, like from one ocean to the other, from the Narrow Sea to the Sunset Sea, like it's a 2-day drive.
Well, you know, that's what happens when you unlock fast travel.
In Fire and Blood, one of the characters has to sail from King's Landing to Lannisport, which is basically on the opposite side of Westeros. And they talk about like just that. It's kind of a punishment. Like they send him to go deal with the Iron Islanders. And they're like, oh yeah, you have to go sail all the way around Dorne where it's super, you know, stormy. You have to stop at Old Town, you know, to take on provisions. Like by the time he gets there, his fleet is like totally different. Like some of his ships have been destroyed. He's picked up more ships. It takes forever to get there. And now it's like Euron Greyjoy is just bouncing back and forth from both sides of Westeros like it's nothing, with ships that should have never been built. Like basically we're getting off track, but the show has gone so off the rails right now that it doesn't even feel like Game of Thrones.
So back to the casting question. Yeah,
the casting question.
Yeah, I'm looking through the list, and there's really nobody that sticks out that was like a bad fit. I mean, I didn't like Sansa first season, but that was just the character, right?
Yeah.
The actress makes sense.
Sansa grew on me. I also do think the actress improved. I don't think her acting was great in season 1, but
I mean, was that they were?
I mean,
we talk about how awesome Joffrey was,
or Shay. I didn't like Shay.
Well,
no, I didn't care for Shay. Shay's character was complete. That was another rewrite that they did for the first season, because I think ultimately their goal was to make the sting of her betrayal more, like
biting.
Yeah, more biting for Tyrion. But it kind of fell flat because I don't know. I feel like
that's not an actress. First of all, she's a porn star. I don't know how she got cast to play Shay, but that girl could not act. Yeah, no, that was bad casting, but that happens a couple seasons. I think that's season 2, isn't season 2 when Shay's introduced to the show?
No, it's the end of season 1.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, because during like after they get freed from the Eyrie, he and Bronn join Jaime.
Right.
And they have that tent and they have that like drinking game where it's like,
and he takes her from the other lord.
Right. Well, and the one thing that, like I said, it bothers me because they've established that Shay is like this quote unquote strong female character who was in love with Tyrion, and then she just betrays him out of nowhere. It's like, I don't know. I feel like
I think they tried to set it up where she was so heartbroken that he sent her away, which he was sending her away to keep her alive, like she was going to be killed.
Right. Like Cersei wanted her dead.
Yeah, and it was going to happen. Like Cersei had already informed to Tywin, and let him know who Shay was, and he said he was going to hang the next whore that, you know, he found Tyrion with. So, in episode 2, episode 2 is the King Road, and that's
didn't Episode 1, we should at least establish that episode 1 ends with Bran getting pushed out the window.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that, but yeah, Bran gets pushed out the window.
I thought that was kind of funny that I was thinking on this today, right? So he got pushed out for essentially peeping, right? And now his superpower is super peeping.
That's really interesting.
It's super ironic.
That is super ironic, and that probably was on purpose. I actually never thought of it. Very, very good, Fox. That was see, that's how you contribute, man.
All right, for me, I'm out, folks.
No, that's a really good point. That's interesting.
My favorite scene, I don't know if it was in episode, I think it was in episode 2 or episode 3, is when Catelyn goes into the tower and she finds like that one strand of hair, and I was like, oh, this is an episode of CSI now.
Run the DNA.
Right.
I think one great thing that happened in episode 1 was that, I was really convinced, they don't ever overtly say it, but when Jon Arryn, the thing that sets everything in motion is the death of Jon Arryn and the fact that the king needs a new hand and doesn't really trust anyone in King's Landing. And the way they have Cersei and her brother kind of talking and conspiring, you're like, oh, she had him killed because, maybe he found out about her and Jaime or whatever. And then quite a ways later, this is all spoilers alert, but you find out that no, it was Catelyn's sister that poisoned her husband, so that she was obviously being manipulated by Littlefinger, who she was in love with. But you find out Littlefinger is the one that started all of this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand what his ultimate goal for starting it was, other than to just kind of show or sow distrust amongst allies.
I think, Littlefinger has a great line later on because, correct me if I'm wrong, but Littlefinger is part of the plot that kills King Joffrey.
Yeesh.
And, sometimes, people ask he's talking to somebody about why he did that and why he helped. And it's like, sometimes you just need to knock over some of the pieces. You basically just need to change the board, because if you're going to do that, you can kind of look ahead and be like, I know this major thing is going to happen, therefore I can prepare for it, where other people are going to be taken by surprise. And
he has something similar to that in the books, where he basically says, sometimes when you're playing the game, you have to make moves that don't make sense.
Yeah.
Even if it means hurting yourself, if you can come on top in the long run.
Yeah, sometimes just to confuse, keep people off balance. And that's what I love about Little. Like, he's playing that kind of meta game,
Yeah.
Isn't that like something he taught Sansa in a recent season?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he gave Sansa some lessons, and also, he tells her, when I think about somebody's motivations, I play a game where I think about what's the worst thing that, reason they could be doing this, and that way I'm never surprised. So I think that does cover episode 1. Episode 2, like I said, the King's Road is basically just that. It's the journey from Winterfell down to King's Landing, where Ned Stark he's the new acting hand of the king. Okay, you want to talk about casting in season 1? Who played you know what? It was Mark Addy played Robert Baratheon. And I like him a little bit as kind of the king that's well past his prime. Yeah. But I will say physically, he's pretty far. He has the dark hair and the beard and all that is fine. But Robert Baratheon is like a giant. Robert Baratheon is huge.
Yeah.
Like he beat Rhaegar Targaryen to death with a warhammer. Like he caved in his breastplate with a hit from the warhammer. And it's like, this guy is, I think, 5'6", the actor that plays him. And I don't know, he just never, it's one thing to have him fat and be past his prime, which is appropriate, but it's another for him to be kind of just like a small, pathetic man. And I didn't love that casting. Like I said, I like the actor. I think he did a good job with the part, but just physically it was so wrong. He should have been a larger, more imposing man. Sean Bean looks like a big guy. I don't think Sean Bean is that large in real life, but all the actors, look bigger on screen than they really are. Jon Snow, the actor that plays him, is like 5'5" or something like that.
He's so tiny.
He's a little guy. But yeah, in episode 2, that's when Jon heads up to join the Night's Watch. And Tyrion goes with him, and they have some really great interactions.
To foot stomp your point on the world travel, like this,
yeah.
I don't even think they got to the capital. I'm forgetting what it's called right now. Like this was just
King's
part
Landing.
of the journey, right? This is just part of the journey.
Yeah. The King's Road takes the entire episode. Yeah, they take an entire episode to go from Winterfell, and that's how Game of Thrones proper used to be. It used to be, oh, you want to travel?
Gathered right now, right at this point.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, well, it pretty much everybody is on the King's Road. Jon and Tyrion are heading north to the Wall, and that's where they have the really good conversation about, Tyrion keeps calling him a bastard, and Jon gets kind of offended, and Tyrion says, don't wear it like armor. The world's not going to forget you're a bastard. Like, you might as well be proud of it, because then it can't hurt you. They have a couple really good interactions, which I think kind of help shape Jon a little bit, because Tyrion is so different than any like male father figures Jon's had. Jon has his uncle, he's got Ned Stark, and these are men of honor that play by the rules, and they are great warriors, and they're very fair leaders and stuff. But Tyrion is something different. Tyrion is a genius. He's very book smart, and he understands how the world really works, with people betraying each other and people being horrible to each other, because people have been horrible to him his entire life. And Jon has had to deal with that, but Jon hasn't really learned how to fight back. And I think Tyrion gives Jon some really good insight of how to survive when you're a bastard and people don't respect you.
Yeah. I do think one of the when is that scene, one of the things I really liked that was added in was, well, one of them was Bronn. I think them fleshing him out a little bit more was good.
Yeah,
his character in the book is kind of just a side. He's kind of just there in some of the chapters.
Bronn's
kind of mentioned.
Bronn's better in the show, but I think the fact that he's become such a show favorite is they're leaning on him a little too much, and I think they're overusing him now.
Oh, I agree.
It seems like he's just become way too important.
Yeah, it's like he's still a sellsword, yet he's like going with Jaime, sitting at council meeting, and that's way above his station.
Yeah, I understand he's a decent fighter. He was in the right time, and he backed the right person, which was Tyrion. But yeah, I think he's been really overused.
Yeah. So
one of the dire wolves makes it all the way to episode 2. That's Lady. Sansa's dire wolf gets killed. In the first example we've really seen of Joffrey just being an asshole. The fact that he attacked a small boy who just to kind of show off, like, oh, I'm the prince, nobody can do anything to me. And then when it came back and bit him in the ass with Arya and the direwolf, like, he's perfectly happy to have Sansa, his fiancée, he's perfectly happy to have her pet killed just as petty revenge for something that he started. And it's like, this is why everyone hates this character. He almost has no redeeming qualities. He does have a couple good ideas later on with like the royal army and a couple other things about like Dany's dragons. Like, he isn't an idiot. He's just vicious and vindictive and likes inflicting pain.
Yeah, I mean, I think the actor did a really good job. I think he channeled the character from the books pretty well.
Oh yeah, he did a great job. And he's not been in a lot. He was in the Batman movie. He was in one scene of the Batman movie where I think Batman gave him his night vision goggles, and then the next thing he pops up as Prince Joffrey in Game of Thrones. That was him. Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's like, they're never going to believe me.
And Batman just gives him the night vision and flies away.
He does do a good job of making a sociopath like TV acceptable.
Oh yeah, he just has the face for it too. He kind of has that weaselish face, and he's got a small build. Now he looks a lot different than in the books. In the books, he's supposed to be tall and very handsome, and in the show, he's kind of like a smaller, kind of runt of a character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think the show does a little bit more of making the evil characters look less attractive.
Yeah.
Or attractive. Not always, but they do that more than the books. I think in the books, a lot of the evil characters are described as very attractive, which is kind of nice that, you know, he broke that trope in the novels, but in the show they didn't really stick with that, because I don't know, people want to look at attractive people, I guess, and root for attractive people and root against the sniveling looking weasel faces like Joffrey.
I ever since I saw somebody compare Arya Stark to Quasimodo.
Oh, it's so apt. That part.
Just looking at her with the way her hair is like parted in the it's like the third season or something, third or fourth season. I was like, oh my god, I can't unsee this now.
You know what it is? It's just she has such a big forehead and her eyes are so far apart. I mean, she's a great actress, and I think she does a really good job playing Arya. I think they don't always give her, you know, the best things to do.
No, they don't.
Like when she gets stabbed in the stomach multiple times and, you know, jumps into shit water and swims away and then is fine and fighting a couple days later. Like, okay.
Well,
she drank some healing tea.
Like, quote unquote, Ned's daughter, right?
She is, yeah. Well, she's, yeah.
I mean, like,
her
in
and
terms
John,
of traits.
Her and John take after the Northmen, and all the other ones kind of take after the ones in the Riverlands with the red hair and the.
Yeah, they're more Tully than Stark.
Yeah, yeah. Even Rob takes after the Tullys, looks wise.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, she's a great actress, and I like what she's done with the character. But yeah, she's not an attractive girl, but she's not supposed to be attractive in the books either.
No,
she's different.
Not
ugly, but not like can't hold a candle to Sansa.
Right. Sansa's like the pretty one, and well, that's one of the reasons why Ned likes Arya so much, is because he reminds him so much of Lyanna,
of his sister. Yeah. That's why part of the reason they have such a close relationship. Also, I mean, she's into sword play and riding horses and all that other stuff, where, you know, Sansa is into needlework and gossiping with her, you know, Jane Poole and all of them. So an episode. Go ahead, Fox.
Inappropriate comments. Continue.
No, those are the best kind.
Oh, Sansa's also into swordplay. It's just different.
I don't know if it happens to her. I don't know if she's a fan. So episode 3, Lord Snow, it took a whole episode to arrive at King's Landing, but they're finally there. And this is where kind of the immovable object that is King's Landing comes up against the force that is Ned Stark, because excuse me, because he just has this idea of, you know, we're going to do things right, and, you know, I'm going to believe what people tell me. And this is the reason why he's so unsuccessful in King's Landing, is everyone's able to play him like a fiddle, because they tell him, basically give him just enough information to hang himself by. And like, especially Littlefinger's the one that really does that, is like, Littlefinger puts him on the path of finding out that Joffrey is a bastard, that all of Cersei's children are bastards. And he knows that Ed is gonna, I keep calling him Ed. It's Eddard and Ned. It's such a bizarre name.
I'm getting Ned from that.
Yeah, but Ned, he's gonna go to the king, and honestly, he plays right into Cersei. Goes to her first because he doesn't want her kids to be killed, and that's his huge mistake. I mean, he makes a lot of mistakes in King's Landing, but the one where he doesn't just immediately go to the king is probably his worst.
One where he goes to Cersei and tells her to leave King's Landing, for the children. It's like, oof, bad move, man. And in your in the whole tropey thing, it's like, yeah, the good guy's trying to protect the kids. This will turn out fine for him.
Do they I can't remember this show. Do they do the thing where Littlefinger's essentially baiting Ned around the city through all the passageways? And they wound up like climbing up like a wall face and going down to the beach or something. Doesn't ring a bell.
That does not ring a bell.
I don't remember. Why?
Oh, it's just a good visual for what you were saying about Littlefinger's essentially stringing him along.
Oh yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Where it's like, well, it also shows too that Littlefinger knows the city, and Eddard is just a complete outsider. He's completely out of his depth.
Yeah. City mouse, country mouse.
Basically.
Yeah.
So in Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things, episode 4, this is a really good Tyrion episode. This is where Tyrion comes back through Winterfell, and he's actually designed a saddle for Bran in his spare time. He's used some of that book learning so that Bran will be able to ride a horse and won't just be, confined to Winterfell for the rest of his life. And it shows a little bit that, like, Tyrion, since he's put up with so much abuse in his life, he can kind of like, he has that special place in his heart for other people that, aren't going to have things quite so easily, maybe as they had before. And I think that's a great, like, insight into Tyrion's character. And it shows, like, yeah, he whores around. Yeah, he's a Lannister who, in the first season, we're kind of led to believe that the Lannisters are the bad guys, as much as the show has good guys and bad guys, which it really doesn't. But, except maybe for, like, Cersei. But yeah, it kind of shows that, like, okay, there's good Lannisters too. There may be bad Starks. And I mean, later on we find out, like, with the Karstarks and stuff, just because somebody's from the north, and oh my god, the Boltons, just because somebody's from the north doesn't mean they're a good guy. Just because somebody's from, the Westlands doesn't mean they're a bad guy, which again is very realistic.
When do we meet Samwell in all this? Is this episode or is it previous?
I think it's this episode. I think it's when he's training. Jon kind of protects him from getting his ass kicked during training.
Because he just shows up out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Well,
he wasn't there when Jon got at the wall.
No.
Right?
No. I think the idea was he was going north with that same group, or maybe we just didn't meet him until then. Because he's all the way from the Reach. His family's insanely wealthy. Like he eventually tells Jon, my dad took me hunting and basically said, if I didn't agree to join the Watch, he would take me hunting again, and there would be an accident. And I would never come home.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, no, it's just, and that's another. He's just a mama's boy, and he's not good at hunting. He's not a good warrior, and that family is known. Like, when you read some of the histories and stuff, like, they're some of the best warriors in the Reach. And it's just, his dad can't bear the thought of him inheriting all of his lands and titles.
Yeah, it was, he basically was okay with him being as he was as his heir until his brother was born.
Yeah. And his brother was more like himself, and, a warrior and a hunter and all that. So, yeah. Like, okay, I won't shame the family by having you be my heir.
Yeah, well, and then also during this time, Daenerys is kind of learning how to, like, fit into the Dothraki culture.
Yeah,
that's also kind of a.
Like, well, she's trying to adapt to her new situation,
right?
This is also, people forget, we have some really good scenes with Viserys. It's not just Joffrey where the actor does a great job of playing, like, an entitled asshole, royal family member.
Yeah. Oh god, that's right.
Viserys is such a little asshole in this, and he's so. I mean, obviously, the way he dies is inevitable because he's with these Dothraki, and he's still acting like, he has power. I mean, he sees it as, okay, I gave you my sister. Now you're going to take your army and conquer the 7 kingdoms for me. And he's just such a cunt about it that it's like, no, this was never going to work out. They were going to kill him eventually. Like, you have no leverage, you know, you can't just go around acting like you're super important when you have nobody around you to protect you.
Right. There's just, I'm just thinking now, this interesting distinction between entitled and spoiled between Viserys and Joffrey.
Yeah. He also, okay, this is also
similar, but that's the distinction.
It's either this episode or the next episode, I don't remember, but one of these episodes with Viserys, we are introduced in a show that is filled with beautiful women, the most beautiful woman in the show, which is the slave girl that Viserys bought. They have the bathtub scene together where he's telling her about the dragons.
Yeah.
That is the most beautiful woman in the show. In all, how many seasons have we had? 7 now? Oh my gosh. They kill her, of course, eventually. You know, all men must die. But I do remember watching that episode, being like, wow, in a show filled with attractive women, I don't know where they found this actress, but holy cow. I cannot remember her name.
The character? Doria?
The character. Is it Aria?
Doria.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sad when she was killed.
I think that's what it was. Because I think Eerie and Jeekwe are the other two, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. These are the weird, freakish things that you remember. Like, nobody knows. Nobody knows these things except for you.
I'm just relying on Google.
I'm too lazy for that. How would you even look at... I don't even know how I would search for that.
Well, step 1, open a private browser.
Girl,
I don't want that shit in my history.
Girl who
I
shares
just did
bathtub.
Viserys tub.
Yeah, Viserys bathtub, and then you find her.
Right.
And then you make it your screen backdrop.
Okay. We're talking about them being landing now. One of my favorite scenes that's like not in the book because it has nothing to do with any of the main characters or any of the point of view characters from the first book. I really like the scene that they show Pycelle in bed with Ross, not because the scene is like that stuff is good, but because it shows like Pycelle has got this frail old man act. Actually able to move and get up and like, you know.
Oh yeah. No, she leaves and he's doing like stretches and jumping jacks, and then
right. And then
when
like
when
he gets outside, he's like limping, like he can't walk and stuff.
Yep.
It's like
he changes his entire pose when he steps outside the door.
Everybody there's just a player, a fake.
Yeah. No, that is a great scene. It tells you a lot about his character and also a lot about King's Landing. And like you said, how everyone's just playing a game to, you know, get one over on everybody else.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like Littlefinger says, this is a city full of liars and every one of them is better at it than you.
Right. I really wish I'm really sad that the books haven't finished because I really want to know this or Varys endgame.
Well, I have a new theory. I have a theory that Martin isn't going to release any of the books until the show is done, because what's going to happen in the books is vastly different than the outline he gave them from the show, and he doesn't want them to be... It seems like he's not even interested in the show anymore. He said he doesn't watch it. It seems like he's kind of sickened with what they've done with it, and he doesn't want to give them any more ideas of what's actually going to happen. I also feel like he's been working on this for so long. They probably should have waited to start doing the show until the books were done or almost done, because it's just kind of, okay, are you really going to give away the end of the way these books are that people have been reading since the 90s or 80s? They've been around for a really long time.
Yeah, it's like 94 or something.
Yeah. And it's like, does he really want to just give that away in a show that he has very little to do with? Like, I really have this theory that he's maybe got more of the last 2 books written than he lets on, and they're going to come out in fairly quick succession. Otherwise, the only other hope is to assume, okay, like, we're not going to see the end of the series because this man who is in his 70s is going to pass away before he can have another 10 years to write a novel, you know?
And then Brandon Sanderson will come along and
finish it off.
Finish it off.
Well, And here's the thing too. I heard him say when he was talking about when he finishes Winds of Winter, what he's going to do next. And he's like, am I going to do another Duncan? I might do another Duncan Egg book. I might finish off Fire and Blood and do the second part to Fire and Blood. I might do this or that. And I'm like, can you finish the series that we're all waiting for? Like, all those other things are great, but he's written 3 books and executive produced multiple television shows with us waiting for Winds of Winter. And to me, I mean, I don't want to sound entitled, but it's like, you got the whole world hooked on these books. You're a little bit, obligated to finish them for us, I would think,
Wait until we go in maximum withdrawal, and then just lays it all on.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. But I do start to worry. I mean, he doesn't look like a healthy man. This is a guy that could have a stroke at literally any minute, and I know he doesn't like to hear that. That makes him really upset when people talk about that. But it's like, you're not a young man. You're not a healthy man. Like, this is the thing that the world's going to remember you by. And it would really be unfortunate if your great magnum opus, book series, he's got lots of other great books. I'm reading Tough Voyaging for like the 4th time. It's a great science fiction novel.
He's trying to find the way to describe how everyone's cock looks in the books. So
yeah.
You got to give him time to describe it in perfect detail.
It's all about describing the veins. That's really...
It's
really where you get the distinction.
He's got some good world building. He's got some good scenes, but there's also some stuff in those books that you're like, who would write this like this?
Well,
total kind of phallic description,
right?
Well, not only that, it's like there's a scene in. I know we're getting off topic here, but like in.
No, that's fine. I'll talk about cocks all day.
No, in Dance with Dragons, where Daenerys is like sick. She's like drank like stagnant water from pools and stuff. She's got like some kind of intestinal bug. And it's like, he's like, he goes on for like a whole fucking page about how she's shitting, like repeatedly. She's like, the more she drinks, the more she shits. And the more she shits, the thirstier she got.
Well, he's actually very good at describing illness. There's a lot of different illnesses in Westeros and Southros. And some of his descriptions are really interesting. He comes up with these there's the shivering sickness that they talk about in Fire and Blood, and it's like, the first day you feel a little cold, the second day you're shivering uncontrollably, the next day you're like bleeding out of your asshole and you die. It's like, that
escalated quickly.
Yeah, it does. It kills. I think the first time the shivering sickness they were talking about, it comes to like King's Landing, it kills 1/3 of the population. Like,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it hits the coastal cities like White Harbor and King's Landing and Old Town really, really hard. But no, I was thinking about that the other day. He is an expert. Like, he does describe illness and symptoms really, really well. He describes food really well. He describes sigils really well. And that's all part of his like world building. It's like he almost sees them in his mind. Yeah. So shit starts to get real in episode 5, Wolf and the Lion. And this is where, they want to assassinate Dany. And Ned goes, absolutely not. He basically gives up his position over it.
The whore is pregnant, Ned.
and then this is where...
tell you what times I've heard that one.
Well, and then this is where it really gets crazy with like Tyrion just happening across Catelyn Stark and getting himself kidnapped and completely fucked and taken to the Eyrie. It's like, he did not expect to walk into that situation. He's like, oh, hey, Catelyn Stark. Like, he had no idea what had happened.
He was like, what's up, man? And she's like, arrest this man.
What happened? She was trying to frame him, is that right?
No. She got information that it was Tyrion's dagger that the assassin that tried to kill Bran had.
Yes, I remember now.
Yeah, Littlefinger plants the idea that the dagger was Tyrion's. So she thinks it was Tyrion that tried to have him assassinated.
Sorry, I was coughing to death. Yeah, so like, it just kind of falls in Catelyn's lap that she has Tyrion, who she thinks plotted the assassination of her son, just fall into her lap.
Which is very, very coincidental.
I mean, they are on the King's Road, and there's really only, so many taverns on the King's Road.
Yeah. I can't remember. Was she going back to Winterfell, or was she going to the Riverlands?
I think she was going to the Riverlands.
Because
Isn't her dad sick or something? Or is that not till later?
I think that's
that's
in like
no.
book
I'm
3.
sorry. She was going to King's Landing. She was, because she was going to tell Ned in person what she found out. I believe. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've read that one.
Yeah, that one's a, because I do remember Brendan Tully was in the first book. He wasn't in the TV show until like the 3rd season, I think, but he was in the first book because I think he was at the Eyrie when they got there. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, not a lot happens in this episode. This is the episode where Ned gets arrested. He gets stabbed through.
Which is, I guess, a more interesting way of injuring him. In the books, his horse just falls on his leg and snaps his leg.
Yeah, and it showed a little bit. It got to show a little bit of Jaime's character, where Jaime was looking forward to the fight with Ned, and when one of his men kind of stabbed Ned in the back, I think does it.
Off, right?
I think he kills the guy, doesn't he?
Oh, he just knocks him out.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember if he like hit him or knocked him out by putting his sword through him. That'll do it too.
Yeah. I mean, then I think is it that one or no? I think it's the next episode where, or maybe it is that episode where the wine seller tries to poison Daenerys, or is that later on?
I'm not sure. I think that's later on.
Okay. It's been a while since I've read or since I watched the show, so
it is right around there though, because it's all part of the plot to kill Dany before she can give birth.
Oh. Overall, was there anything, I guess, in the last couple episodes that you really hated?
No, I think like you said, they stayed really true to the books.
I think the biggest problem I have with one of the things with Daenerys in the entire season is how confusing it is. They make her as if she's immune to fire, and that is not the case.
No, it's also contradictory because it does bother her, and then now she's just straight up like she burns down the Dothraki tent with herself inside of it.
Well,
because I think they were confused, because I think in the scene where the eggs hatch, that was like a special magical event.
No, because they did the same thing in the beginning of the season where she put the eggs in the fire.
Yeah.
And like she's like, "Oh, don't touch that. It's hot." And like she grabs the egg, and one of her handmaids grabs the egg too. It burns her hand, but Daenerys isn't burned. And
yeah, and also in the very first time,
hot things are hot.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, when she gets into the bath and everyone.
It's like that episode of Futurama where they're all going to go dive into the lava pit.
Yeah. But
I'm going in there after them.
In Fire and Blood, Targaryens can absolutely be killed by fire, because many of them are.
Well, I mean, the thing is that again, I think it confused some viewers, because like they're like, oh, so when Viserys dies and he gets the molten crown, and she's like, fire can't kill a dragon, and everyone's like, oh, so she's immune to fire and he's not. Does that mean they're not related?
No, I think it was just, well, the whole thing too of like the blood of the dragon, of like how strong the Targaryen blood is with somebody.
Stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Because
I
again,
even thought of that, but yeah,
it just doesn't make sense, because again, in the books, she can be burned by fire. When she burns Khal Drogo's body and her dragon eggs on the funeral pyre along with the witch or whatever, like she comes out and she's unscathed, but her hair's gone. Her like
that's true.
She's not immune to fucking fire. That's so irritating to me that they can't maintain that continuity for some reason.
So something small that does bother me too is the fact that they didn't do her eyebrows. They didn't color her eyebrows, so it looks kind of ridiculous. And also, they didn't color her eyes. Like
she's supposed to have like a
purple
like
eyes.
Purple eyes, yeah.
Yeah, violet.
Yeah.
And they were like, and somebody did an edit of the entire first season of all the Dany scenes where he just changed the color of her eyes, and it looks a lot better. Like it's people are like, oh, it would look unrealistic. I'm like, really? In the show with the dragons, you're concerned about like realism with somebody's eye color? Are you serious? Like, it's supposed to be one of the distinguishing marks of the Targaryens. Like, they don't all have it.
Right.
Like, in Fire and Blood, there's a couple that are born. There are Targaryens that are born that take after like their other parent. Like, it does happen. And obviously with Jon Snow, spoiler alert, it was Jon Targaryen. Or Aegon Targaryen is his actual name. It like he obviously he doesn't have violet eyes or anything like that. He has like he takes after the Stark part of his family, but he's still a Targaryen. Like, you know, I don't know. It just would have been a nice thing in the show. There's a lot of characters like Euron Greyjoy. You read Euron Greyjoy's description in the books, and it's so vivid and it's so interesting. Like, he just looks like a crazy person. And then in the show, it's like he's just another brown-haired guy. You know, he looks like older Reek. What's Reek's actual name?
Are you talking about when Theon becomes Reek?
Theon. Yeah, Euron just looks. The actor that they got, plays Euron, does look like a relative of Theon. Like, good job on that. But he's supposed to have like one eye and crazy dyed hair and scars and like all this other stuff that I can't really even remember.
And I know
it's just the show is like, well, he's got brown hair and he just looks like a guy. It's like, okay.
What's up, guy?
Sup,
Greyjoy.
Guy Greyjoy.
Maybe they think it'll look silly, but I mean, they have other characters that look like, you know, kind of weird and people like them. Like Varys is strange looking and people like his character just fine.
You have a last name, Guy.
I feel like it's hard to go not to camp with pirate.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Ilario is another one. Ilario, Leo Beast, like can barely walk and gets carried around in a litter, and he's when it's like give him beard and we'll like braid some of his hair, and that's Ilario. It's like, well, that's you could have got somebody from like My 600-Pound Life, you know, thrown him on a litter, and he could have been one of the characters. It would have been fine.
That's terrible.
How awesome would that have been if like they're pulling they're pulling him up on a litter, and all of a sudden you see and you're like, oh my god, it's Gabe Newell.
Oh, my legs.
Or it's fucking George R.R. Martin.
Oh god.
I think it would have been perfect. I think George R.R. Martin would be perfect. If
George R.R. Martin would be
like,
a good Illyrio.
No, I think he'd be perfect. A good Wyman Manderley.
Oh yeah, he'd be a perfect Wyman Manderley.
Yeah,
he's got the white hair and everything.
Exactly, he'd be perfect. As a matter of fact, I think that Wyman Manderley is stand-in in the novels.
Oh my god. Well, I think he thinks of himself as Tyrion.
Probably.
I feel like he writes Tyrion as who he sees himself as. Just like
that's the only thing about Tyrion and Daenerys, Jon, in the books. Even in the books, they have got a lot of I would call plot armor. At least up until a certain point. In the final novel, it'll kind of be like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play out and end. You know that they're going to be at least near the end if they die.
Right. I think I kind of hope Dany dies and Jon doesn't and Tyrion doesn't. I can't see Dany living through to the end.
I don't see her living through to the end.
Like, I don't think, number one, I don't think she'll be a particularly good ruler. That doesn't mean that, you know, he wouldn't put her on the Iron Throne, but I mean, obviously the stakes are bigger than who rules the Iron Throne anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. That's the one thing is like, I'm really interested books. With the show, it's kind of just like an obligation at this point. Like
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong, I enjoy watching it, but it is no longer like the peak of television like it used to
No.
be. It's don't get me wrong, it's not nearly as bad as Walking Dead has become. Walking Dead is complete, a complete dumpster fire of a show.
Yeah.
But, this last season with the teleporting characters and all the Deus Ex Machina to keep Cersei in the fight, no. The fact that Euron Greyjoy build me 1,000 ships while he's standing on islands that I've never seen a tree on. I'm like, I don't think you can make ships out of those rocks, man. And not only does he show up with 1,000 ships later, all fully crewed, but they all have these like amazing sigils that cover the entire sails, and they've got this like intricate ram technology and all this stuff. And I'm like, but no, this is just we're completely just making shit up as we go along. They're not even thinking about logistics anymore.
Nope.
Yar just pulled him out of her butt.
Yeah, and I will say, like, Martin occasionally pulls an army out of his ass in the books, where it's like somebody shows up with 7,000 men, and it's like, well, why wasn't he in the last battle? It seems like those 7,000 men could have been really helpful. He can usually come up with a reason why they weren't there, but not always. But yeah, that really bothered me when he shows up with this like amazing fleet. And I'm like, no, this is wrong.
I know this is kind of going further beyond what we're talking about with the first season, but what do you think of I always figured that Aegon was a fake.
Aegon's definitely a fake. Aegon's definitely
I don't think Fox knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, because that's another reason why I think he's a fake, is the show has dumped the Dorne plot. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens in Dorne in the books that the show it doesn't happen at all.
You want to talk about a dumpster fire? Look at the fucking plot line for Dorne. Oh
yeah, no, and you know what? They had told, I don't know, the producers had been like, can't do Dorne, we don't have the resources, and they were like, and they decided to do this half measure where we'll have a little bit of Dorne, but it won't like matter at all. And to me, I think that's almost worse. They should have just like written Dorne out of the whole damn show.
Oh, like with the 3 vipers or whatever it is.
Yeah, the sand snakes.
Yeah.
No, you once you get there in the books, like Dorne is really important to what's going on in the books, and in the show, it's just a joke. Well, there's a theory that that character you were talking about is Ilario's son with one of the Blackfire. She doesn't know she's a Blackfire, but one of that woman that he talks about, that he was in love with. He kept her hands, which is creepy.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, Ilario keeps the hands of dead wife.
Ilario does. Okay.
There's a theory that like she was a Blackfire. He, like, his son is who they're,
Yeah, that they think that Aegon isn't actually a Targaryen, he's a Blackfire.
Yeah. Again, that's one of the really interesting things in the book. Like, okay, I want to see where this goes, but in the show, I mean, it's been completely written out. And that's the thing, when things get completely written out of the show, it kind of ruins plot threads of the books, because if they really do have George R.R. Martin's like outline, which he said he hates making outlines anyway, but if they have his outline, like, that means, does this mean Stannis comes to nothing the way he comes to nothing in the show? Does this mean, the all of that comes to nothing the way it isn't even mentioned in the show? Like, I would assume so, But
that's the thing, is that like there are plot threads that go beyond season 2 and 3 that are changed completely from the books. The whole thing with like Jaime's plot is completely different. Brienne's plot is, well, sort of different.
Yeah.
But like they're in a completely different space, like in the books right now, where they are versus where they are on the show.
Well, that's like what you said, is little changes early on make huge changes later, because it gets increasingly difficult, when multiple characters now are not in the show, and you need to get a character to where they were or something, for them to do something. I think Stannis is the biggest example of a main character that where we are in the show with him being, I guess, dead. I'm going to assume dead. We didn't see his death on screen, so you never know. But I mean, that was a couple seasons ago now, so I'm just going to assume Stannis is dead. on where he is in the books, where he actually still has a pretty decent army with him. He just had a victory at the Wall. He's got all these wildlings fighting for him, and he's coming down on Winterfell. You know, like, yeah, he has the blizzard and everything, and he's got stuff to contend with, but that's a very different situation.
The cool thing about this battle at Winterfell is that there's allies and enemies in Stannis' army. There's allies and enemies inside of Winterfell.
Right. Yeah. So it's like there could be a lot of betrayal.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that there's a lot of potential there instead of just Stannis, you know, not protecting his stores and his horses in the middle of the night, having everything get progressively more fucked. Like, he's supposed to be a good military leader. And the fact that, you know, his army just completely gets wiped out in the stupidest way possible for the second time.
Yeah. Anyway, back to season 1.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much covered everything. A lot happens at the end, obviously, with, you know, Ned gets offered, okay, if you just, you know, shut up about all this, you can go to the Wall. And he agrees to do that. And then Joffrey, you know, being Joffrey, cuts off his head anyway. Yeah. Which is really the event that starts the war. Everything else is leading them toward war. But
I'm looking at this list. I thought that was near the end of the season, and it's like there's 3 more episodes after that.
Yeah. Well, what they would usually do is a couple episodes before the end, you would really have some crazy episodes, and then you have a couple episodes to like digest and see all the aftermath of what happened before the slow build again.
And then...
Yeah. And then, you know, we're introduced to the Freys, who are supposed to be bannermen of the Tullys in the Riverlands, but they're, in a lot of ways, they're more powerful, they're more wealthy, there's a lot more of them. Really, the Tullys are only the lords of the Riverlands because they were the first ones to bend the knee to the Targaryens.
But it's also important to note, I mean, they kind of touch on it a little bit in the show, but in the books, like, the Freys are looked down upon by every other noble house, even though they control a big portion of the Riverlands. They have the twins, which basically gives people, you know, passage.
Well, it's income right there. I mean, they control the toll for crossing the river, which provides them just money for doing nothing. Yeah, they are not well thought of, obviously. And because of that, they're kind of bitter, and it seems like they're always scraping for more power, and they see this conflict kind of becomes their chance to get it.
Right.
They also, what they called him the late Lord Frey, because at one of the major battles, was it the Battle of the Trident that he showed up late?
It was the Battle of the Trident. He showed up late. And
yeah, after it was already basically over.
Everybody was like, well, we know that you showed up just to help out whoever was winning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, they don't respect him, and there's reason for that lack of respect. But yeah, they see this as, oh, we'll let you cross, you know, and we'll send our army with you, even though we're technically your bannermen and we're supposed to follow you because the Riverlands have pledged to help the North. Yeah. They do it like, oh, if you marry one of them. Now, see, here's the great thing, though. So spoilers, Robb Stark, who's now leading the Northern armies because he declared war on the king. He's basically doing a rebellion. He eventually dies because of this. And one thing that I will say was different about early Game of Thrones and a lot of other shows is sometimes in other shows, they'll kill characters because they need to raise the rating. So they'll kill characters because, you know, they think that character needs to die. But you look back at all his decisions, he made an oath to people that are untrustworthy, and then he broke his oath. And then they said, oh, everything will be forgiven if your uncle does this. If your uncle marries one of, you know, my daughters and you come for the wedding. It's like, you can see the mistakes he's made of, number one, trusting them in the first place. Number two, betraying them when they're people that obviously like are petty and hold a grudge, and they're not going to forget that. And number three, letting your guard down in front of people that you just betrayed, that you know are untrustworthy. It's like when he died, it felt earned. You saw all the decisions that led to that.
Whereas, when Ned died, it felt earned. I mean, in a different way, but yes.
Yeah,
the worst part about it was I mean, I didn't watch the episode before I read the book, and it was a gut punch.
Yeah.
Because you thought yourself, you're like, okay, he's got to make this, so he's gonna try and find a way. He's gonna go to the wall, see John or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're gonna plot to, maybe rally the wall. That was my thinking in like the book, and then it's like, oh, no.
Well, and that's the thing is like I always say, the show does a great job, and the books too, of convincing you that like the Starks are the main characters and they're going to have all this plot armor, and you realize very quickly that, oh no, they don't. They're just the characters to get you invested in the world and to introduce you to the characters that are the main characters, which I would say are Tyrion, Jon, and Dany.
Yeah.
But it's like for most of them, like they are important characters, but they're certainly not the main characters. And this is not a story about the Stark family. This is really a story about the Targaryen family, which there's also a rumor that Tyrion is a Targaryen too.
Yeah. Of Tywin's no, not Ty. Was it Tywin?
Tywin's wife.
Tywin's wife, Joanna, and the Mad King.
Yeah,
he had like an obsession with Joanna.
Yeah, which in the books, doesn't Tyrion have one purple eye?
It's like it's purple-ish, but like almost black.
Yeah,
is how it's described.
But even that could be a Targaryen trait. Like there's that I think might be very credible. Right. And I mean, even when Tywin dies, he tells Tyrion you're no son of mine.
Well, in the books, Tyrion, that while he's going to the wall with Jon, tells him about how he has dreams of him flying on a dragon.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Well, in the show too, they've kind of retconned how smart they say dragons are. Now they're saying like, Tyrion has that thing where like there's some that say dragons are as smart as people, where in the books they're like dragons are like as smart as a dog, maybe an intelligent dog. They can learn some words, but that's about it. And but there is the scene in the show where Tyrion does go in there and he unhooks the dragons from their chains and lets them out. Yeah. And it's like, okay, did they understand what he was saying to them, or did they kind of respect him because he was a Targaryen and they sensed that? Because the Targaryens do have a special bond with the dragon. In Fire and Blood, there's a part where during the fight, there's a civil war between the Targaryens, and the ones that are in Dragonstone are like, we have all these dragons, but we don't have anyone to ride them. There's only like 2 of us that are dragon riders here. And so what they do, there's the little fishing village on Dragonstone, which is all the Targaryens would do like the rite of the first night and all that. And they, go down with the tavern wenches and all that. So there are a ton of bastard Targaryens there. So they have this competition. They're like, if you can, like come up and try to ride these dragons. And if you can ride one of the dragons, we'll kind of like recognize you. And 3 dragon riders are found, 3 people that the dragons, like just out of just bastards, 1 girl and 2 men out of the village that can ride the dragons. And it's like everyone else just got eaten or burned,
Yeah.
So they figure like, okay, these 3 did have enough Targaryen blood in them that they could tame a dragon.
Yeah.
So
and the first book has like what like 7 or 8 characters, right?
Yeah, I think so.
From that point on, it just expands out so much.
There are definitely more and more point of view characters.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, yeah.
And how it ends is with Dany, the pyre, and she burns Drogo's body and goes in with the eggs and kind of a blood magic ritual. That witch talks about how she had traveled to Ashai in the books. I do remember that. In the books, she traveled to Ashai and she trained with that maester from White Harbor. Was it White Harbor? No, Old Town. That maester from Old Town that has the black candle.
The glass candle?
The glass candle, yeah. And he's the one that like communes with dark gods and talks to strange sailors, and like he's basically one of the maesters that's like also basically a wizard. Like most of the maesters are very against magic, like they're kind of the scientists of this world, but he's like, he basically says like the reason why what's his name got made the maester at the wall and wasn't like grand maester or anything like that is because they didn't trust him because he was a Targaryen, and Targaryens are associated with dragons, and dragons are magic, and that's why they sent him to the wall.
Well, I think if you ever, I know Fox, you watch Alt Shift X videos.
Nope.
No. Well, if you want to look up some of like the weird theories around Game of Thrones, look up Alt Shift X.
Alt Shift X and Ideas of Ice and Fire.
I never heard the one about Tyrion.
There's
really?
There's
that one's really common.
Yeah, that one's about Tyrion, and then there's like this grand conspiracy from the Maesters to wipe out magic.
Yeah,
there's a really big one about that. There's a lot of little side stories, again, that aren't really mentioned, that aren't touched on in the show, but like in the books they're kind of mentioned, and people are like, right. Oh, I wonder what this could mean.
Yeah,
that's interesting because the show does such, I don't want to say good job, but usually you perceive them as like undamaging. I can't think of a better word. Harmless, right?
Yeah, they're definitely not
neutral.
In the books. They definitely have their own agenda. A lot of ideas that is, but no, that witch. She talks about going to a Shai, studying under, learning about like the insides of human bodies. She's a shadow binder, I believe. She's a shadow binder. I don't remember, but she learned all these different things. And there's an idea that, you know, when we talk about the bigger players, the kind of Lovecraftian gods that are moving pieces around, you know, was she put there so that specifically when she's burned in Drogo's funeral pyre with Dany and the dragons, like is she as a witch, is she part of the ritual that allows the dragons to hatch, you know? Or was it just coincidence? Was the whole thing just coincidence, or a bigger force that was leading all this to happen? And it seems with, you know, all the Lovecraftian stuff that Martin is into, it seems like there's probably something bigger that's driving everything. You know, you learn about later about the Black Stone, and, you know, the Emperor of Yi and how he hears things from the stone and all that. And it's like, there's really, and the thing is, they're all delivered. You can read the books and kind of miss it all because it's all delivered as just a line here or a line there. But when you start to put it all together and you go, wait, that's book 2, and now this character is saying this, and it really starts to like weave this tapestry that goes through multiple novels and creates a bigger. And that's what I love about Game of Thrones, you know, Song of Ice and Fire.
Well, that's one. And then one of the other things I really like about Song of Ice and Fire is that, like, it's very different on the show. Like, something happens in the north. Like, this one little thing happens in the north. In the next episode, King's Landing knows about it. They know all the players, everything that happened.
Right.
Whereas like, in the books, it's like you'll have a character go to a tavern, and it's like, you know, miles and miles away from where this thing happened, and they're hearing this story, and you're hearing it secondhand, but you know what happened, but like all the small folk around them are hearing, this is what I heard. Oh, Robb Stark turned into a direwolf and killed a bunch of people, and you're like,
and that's how it would really work. Like, you're saying people adding on to the story.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, was there anything else we wanted to talk about season 1? I think we went a little long. I think we were planning to do about an hour. We're about at an hour and a half.
So much content to cover.
There is a lot. There is definitely a lot to cover with Game of Thrones. Especially in this.
You forgot the water dancer.
Introducing all the players.
Oh, Sirio. I forgot about Sirio.
It's off like a whole bunch of theories in itself too, right?
Oh yeah. Well, see, the thing is that they changed that story in Bravos for Arya so much that it's like, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, well, when we get to that season, we'll talk about Arya and Bravos. Terrible. I think that was one of the first things for the show that went off the rails for me. Like, I remember every time in the show, they would do an Arya, you know, chapter, and it would just be god awful. It seemed like they kept doubling down on all of these tropes. And I remember when she was walking on the bridge and everyone, you know, was talking online about like, oh, that's not really Arya. She wouldn't be that stupid to be walking around like that. It's like, nope, she was just walking around, even though the world's greatest assassins were in that city trying to kill her. Like, of course she got stabbed in the stomach. There's a lot to unravel there. We'll have to do an entire episode on what's fucked up about Arya.
Yep.
All right. Well, this was our first episode of 2019. We're going to do a little bit of a tear on Game of Thrones and try to cover a lot of content. There's a ton to cover. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Spanks.